So today I wanted to discuss the answer about what is a true believer. Because the truth is that the majority of people in most religions are not true believers. And let me explain what I mean by true believers, obviously. Most people think of a believer as something that, I believe with blind faith, it's in my heart. I truly, I truly believe that, this is true, but it's a belief. It can very often be based on the way you were raised up, the social pressure of people, the way the government or the advertisement, the media push you to think, or the community, the religious community you are in, or the country. So, or just like what you like, what you feel connected to. Okay, now all that is very nice, but it might be all false and wrong, and therefore there's an obligation, and in Judaism there's a special mitzvah to should believe and know that God is one. וידעת היום והשבתה לבביך. So in Judaism we say it's not enough to feel, it's not enough to believe with a blind faith, to feel and to think it. Oh yeah, it's probably true. No, that's dangerous. The greatest killers in history. Hitler was a big believer in his thing, and Stalin and all believers in communism or whatever it is that people have done and destroyed so many lives. So belief is extremely dangerous. So the question, so one needs to go from belief to knowing. One needs to be convinced. Obviously, if there is a God, if truly there is a God, and He created the world, it only makes sense because we have to use our logic. If we have given a brain, that means there's a logic, there's a reasoning that we're supposed to use. Otherwise, why we have that? Why did God created logic? So it has to be, and I think everybody understands that on a simple, very simple level, that if God created the world a certain way, it must be that, meaning in the way that it must be that He put in it the information on how to connect to Him. Why would God just create the world and not put information on how to relate to Him? This is absurd, especially beings that are looking constantly for meaning and spirituality and depth and the source of their existence. We all do that. It's in our human nature. So it has to be that God put into the world, into nature, those tools and a way to connect. So plus I have to also add that, if 90% of the world, and I think I'm not very far from the exact statistic, 90% of the world, if not more, believe in spirituality, God, many gods. They believe that there's certain powers that exist. But what happened with time, we have kind of merged and disconnected from all those beliefs because of science and the Industrial Revolution and all that. And since then, a lot of people in the Western world especially have started to think logically, but more according to science. So, but even today, as we speak, when there are tons of, scientific discoveries and all that, there's still about, I think, 90% of religious people in the world. Religious in the sense that they believe in some type of higher power. So that proves already that it's, why would most of the world believe in that type of things? And we check all over the place in the previous time, it seems that they were all much more spiritual, because all the stories are connected to something spiritual. It looks like with time we have digressed from our spirituality, disconnected and connected more to a physical world. and detach oneself from the spiritual connection. So the idea is that if there's a way to connect, most people will agree that it's here. The question is where and how. So I didn't grow up religious, and I used to study every religion. Not religiously, but I observe and I was interested in everything. And if one starts studying all the different religions, one starts really realizing that there are a lot of problems, and a lot of them actually the same, and all of them say the same concept. So what's the difference, and which one is actually true or not? So everybody, obviously, you can't convince anyone of anything, if they don't want to. Each one has to make their own choice about what's the truth. But very often in Christianity and Islam and in other, you're accepted right away with blind faith. In Judaism, you're not accepted with blind faith. You have to know. You have to be convinced. You have to really be convinced that that Judaism is for Jews, right? For those who wants to be Jewish, and it's a special mission. And I have to choose it, especially if I'm a non-Jew who wants to convert. But more than that, as a Jew, especially if you're born religious or you grew up in a religious environment, it's very hard to choose because you never got the chance to actually make that research and choose. The truth is, we should all have that rebellious phase, and the rebellious phase is actually healthy. The kids asking, is there a God? How do we know? How do we know the Torah is from God? All that. It's so healthy for kids to do, but very often, because the teachers don't have the right answers, and teachers themselves don't know, they only believe, they're not convinced, they grew up like that, so they're comfortable, it's easy. They were never given real powerful answers. The truth is that if one learns, beside all the answers that exist, and there are logical answers, and there are archaeological answers, and historical evidence, and there's codes and science, divine information that could not be known without some spiritual higher power. So when we with this, and with learning in depth the Torah, with the Kabbalah, because there's a deeper meaning of the Torah, when we see how the Old Testament is made, and the wisdom, the wealth, but one has really to spend some time to learn about it, and discovers that it defies human logic. The perfection of the Torah and the wisdom that we have cannot be made by human being. But this requires one to put oneself complete to it. Most rabbis are not qualified to teach that way. They don't know. They never look deeper. Because they grew up like that, and they were never taught to go deeper, or whenever they were asking questions, they were refuted right away without any valid explanation. So we grew up like that, and we just continue. A lot of kids today don't accept that, especially if they're hurt by the system, or abused or anything. They reject the whole thing. Like, how can that whole thing be true if people hurt me, right? If I cannot ask questions and answers. The whole thing of Judaism is asking questions and getting answers. So how to be a true believer? A true believer requires to make real research and not being afraid. God doesn't want you to serve him out of blind faith. He's not interested. He has already thousands of people doing it out there. God wants the real thing. If God is God, right? A loving being who gives us free choice. He wants us to choose our relationship with him. He doesn't want us to be forced. He wants us to choose that responsibility. He wants us to love him and choose that love, and choose our relationship with him. That's why the Torah was given to the Jewish nation as a choice. We could have said, no, we don't want, but we say, Naseh B'Nishma, we want. We're not forced. It's a misconception. We only were chosen because we chose God. If we have said, nope, it would have been us, it would have been someone else. Just like Abraham, it didn't have to be Abraham, it could have anyone. But Abraham was the one who was acting in a way that put God's attention on him. So all that to say is that we all need to go through that rebellious phase, so to speak, and ask, well, is there truly a God? And is the Torah really written by God? And how do I know? What are the proofs? Because they are proofs. It's just people don't know where to look. And it's more powerful than before. Before, I think the proofs were more spiritual. We didn't have that much thing, but today with science and archaeology and history, and we have information, there's so many proofs. Plus the learning itself, like I said, it's one of the greatest proof, because we experience, we see that it's beyond. Anyway, that's what I want to speak about, real truth. And being a true religious, don't just accept a religion because it feels good. You have to be very honest with yourself. Most people just are religious because it feels good, because I like to be part of a community, because it's fashion, because that's what people believe in or around me. But that's you can be wrong your whole life. It might feel good, but you might be wrong the whole life. You have to be logical. Things have to make sense. It has to go according to logic. But a lot of people, they don't care. As long as they're happy, they don't look. So they can be good people and happy in their religion, even though it's not true. And as long as we search for truth, God doesn't care how religious we are or not. It doesn't matter how much we do. It's everything about quality and quantity. God wants the truth. God doesn't want just slave worship and just following orders like a puppy, like a slave. That's not the definition of a slave anyway in Judaism. We're here to have a real intimate relation with God, the same as a husband and wife. So the same way people wouldn't want to have an arranged marriage, right, and forced to marry someone who don't want, God is not going to do that with us. So this is what I wanted to share. Strive for truth, look for truth, ask the right people. You have questions, you can ask me, but there are people out there that have real answers for real questions with logic and reasoning, and one has to be open. Just sometimes we are not ready to accept the truth. I told people, I can teach you now for an hour and prove to you that the Torah is written by God. But they might hear all the proofs and make complete sense and logic, but they're not ready to accept it. They're not ready to change their life to be religious. So that's a different discussion. Someone has to ask why I might not be ready for being religious or not, or being a believer, a true believer, to know. No, okay, that's fine. We need to know that. Even if one is not ready, it doesn't mean he has to drop everything. It's not all or nothing in Judaism. Everything is a growth process. Everything is about discovering one's level and growing little by little. And overdoing things without true belief can be backfire. As soon, because there's no foundation. As soon as something bad happens, we're gonna throw up the whole thing. So, as soon as one has a midlife crisis about being truly authentic, then might just throw everything, because until then they never really research for with the true heart, with the true on their own, with a free choice, and have to start from scratch. All right, this is what I wanted to share. I hope you all become true believers, and meaning knowers of who God is truly, and not be afraid to tackle the big question and be honest with yourself, being authentic. There's nothing more satisfying and happy of being an authentic person. Don't fake it. Be who you are and learn and grow. The only thing that God will go and attack you for is for not doing the effort of searching. Avodat Hashem, avodah, the work is the work of research and really working on finding God truly, not just robotic religious observance. God hates that. He wants real emotional connection, and that only works if we know why we're doing what we're doing, and that it makes sense, and that it's connected to something bigger, and we understand through logic and with emotions how it works and why it works and how beautiful it is. So that's the key. Be real and authentic, and that's what God will ask you at the end of time. Have you really done it with a true belev shalem, with a true heart? Doesn't mean one has to abandon everything they're doing. Doesn't mean they have to. But even one is religious, he can start asking the question and searching as he's religious. But if someone is religious and it's a resentment, they hate it, and it can backfire even worse, and someone is going to drop everything and not do the research. So one has to know oneself, know thyself, and do the true search and find real answers, even if it takes a lifetime, because that's all what God wants. The world was created as a hide and seek game, light and darkness. The first game that children play is peekaboo and hide and seek, and somehow they're so excited, peekaboo, right? Because there's an excitement in the soul, in the human psyche, in ourselves, in finding the truth, in finding the light, being surprised. That's part of our DNA, our system, our makeup. So we have to be constantly striving for that more and more until everything is crystal clear. It's going to be completely crystal clear when Moshiach comes, when we have a total revelation. But until then, there's still a lot we can reveal. As much as we can reveal before the full revelation is on our, it's for our merit, it's our zchut. It's you get the perks and show true love and dedication to fight for truth, strive for truth. So may we all be true seekers of truth, and never keep searching.